Hello everyone, this is Tony. This is a video I made recently. I was having some back pain and I wanted to be able to go for a run. And so this is the routine I went through to try to treat it myself. To let you know, this is not any necessarily prescribed exercise program. This is something you can follow along with if you would like. Certainly, there's no reason to think that you have to do these exactly this way or in this order. This is just something that I was doing to make myself feel better. There's not necessarily any clinical background for this. Certainly, though, these motions that I'm doing are not necessarily for everybody. So if you're having diagnosed back problems, this is not necessarily the workout for you. So make sure you always talk to your doctor and or physical therapist before doing any kind of exercise program. So I'm at about 3 out of 10 pain when I started this, and I was at 0 out of 10 pain when I was done, and it allowed me to go for about a 30-minute jog afterwards. So I was quite happy with the results. I'm just going to walk you through some of it, just to let you know what I'm doing. And again, if you want to join along, that's fine. If there's any problems that you're having, go ahead and stop what you're doing. You do not have to do these exercises in this order, or even any exercise in particular. So here I'm just doing standing extensions, putting my back into extension, putting my hands back lower than the belt line to stabilize, and just going into extensions. You may recognize this if you've done any physical therapy work and utilized the McKinsey method. There's a lot of extensions done to basically put the disc back into place. And of course, I don't know if I necessarily have a disc issue, but it does feel good when I'm done with it, so that's what I'm kind of basing what I'm doing on. Again, this is a workout that I'm doing to make myself feel good. Okay, and next I'm going to do a seated spinal flexion stretch. Just bending forward, being sure to breathe in and out. Deep inhales and exhales. On the exhale, just trying to relax further into the stretch, just letting the head down, everything just going down towards the ground, stretching out the lumbar spine. And now here I'm just alternating and going from side to side again in this forward stretched position. Typically stretches are supposed to be done for 1 minute holds. In this video I'm not necessarily doing the full minutes. Again, this is to relieve my back pain. And I'm going to be coming up from this stretch, and notice how I use my hands to push on my knees to come up to a sitting position, not just use my low back to come up. And here I've adjusted the bench so that it's flat for a rotation stretch. You can just as easily do this in a chair. You don't need to actually use a weightlifting bench to do this. And again, just going slow and easy. And the time period is not necessarily 1 minute. Again, it's just where I feel comfortable doing it for pain relief. Next, going onto the ground, doing a lat stretch here, straightening out the arms, bending back, sitting basically on my butt to get the lats stretched. And you might be wondering why I'm stretching out lats at all when it's my lumbar spine that is giving me some difficulty, but everything's connected. So stretching out the lats for me, it felt right to get everything loosened up. They are a large back muscle. They do a lot of work that I do in terms of exercise, so I did feel like I needed to do it. And of course, here is a modification where I'm going to one side to isolate the lats on the right side. And next, the left. Notice how all the transitions that I'm doing are slow and controlled. Nothing's fast with any of this. And next, I'm coming up in what I believe the yoga position is called is a Cobra or half Cobra. I'm just basically coming propped up onto my forearms and elbows in a prone position and just maintaining this. This puts my lumbar spine into extension. And this is really just a precursor to doing press-ups that are a large part of the McKinsey method for treatment of low back pain that physical therapists use. I've used it with quite a lot of success. I am trained in McKinsey, and what I'll be doing is using my arms to push myself up with for repetitions. It's important to use your arms and not your low back because you don't want your low back muscles actually to be contracting here. It's really supposed to be the arms that do all the work. And this is an exercise primarily to change disc. If there's any type of disc bulging that is posterior, this will, in theory, help to push it into an anterior position. There's other theories on why this does help with back pain. It is, again, of course, important to note that different types of back pain are caused by different structures and different reasons. And this is not necessarily the thing to be doing for everybody. Again, this is what I felt was good for me at the time that I was performing it. And yes, it does seem like there is an inordinate number of these, but again, this is part of the methodology for this type of treatment. Next, I will be transitioning into supine, and notice how I'll be sticking my arm out for the rollover to my right when I do this, so as I don't get it caught up underneath me. It just makes it more comfortable and more easy to do. And next, I'll be doing single knee to chest stretches and also double knee to chest stretches. These are done, I first show my hands on top of the knee. This is not necessarily the best position if you have some type of knee pain. It does cause compression. So there are some people that should not be doing this. And then I demonstrate putting my hands underneath the knee, just on the hamstring. And I'll be doing this for both the single knee and the double knee to chest. And when you're doing double knee to chest, it is putting the spine into some flexion, which does stretch out the lower lumbar. Next, I'll be doing pelvic tilts, which is a fairly subtle motion, but I did feel at the time that it was the right time to do it. I was already in a position for supine to do it. And basically, it's a movement of the pelvis anterior to posterior. And there's not a lot of space with which to do this. But what it does do, it does activate abs and low back, and it also does provide some amount of stretching to the low back at the same time. It does provide some amount of stability. I felt that it was important for me to do it. I just felt right at the time. And here I go into a supine rotational stretch. My hands are going one way, my knees are going the other way. This basically means that my shoulders are going one way and my pelvis is going the other way, which basically puts a rotation moment on my lumbar spine and thoracic spine to a certain extent. I'm also turning my head as well. Again, I'm trying to basically put all the muscles in the spine on a rotation stretch. This is more aggressive than the seated rotation stretch that you saw me earlier in the video. And again, of course, I always use a breathing method of slow, deep breaths. When exhaling, just relaxing further into the stretch. Stretching should never be to where it's causing pain. If you're going to the point where it's causing pain, you're going too far. You need to back off and just relax into it. And here I'm going into a further aggressive spinal rotation stretch in supine, in which I've actually extended out my leg, and this does cause the pelvis to turn more as well as stretches out some of the structures on the lateral side of the thigh. Very good. This is not necessarily where everyone should be going to. Again, this is just what I felt was good for me at the time. And then I go into some more pelvic tilts, and this is more so defined neutral spine. Now, neutral spine is basically the point where you have the least amount of discomfort, the least amount of pain. That's usually the point of in your spine of your range that you want to try to be maintaining at all times anyways, particularly if you're having any type of back pain. Coming up into a seated position, I now am going to do a rotation stretch in long sitting. So one leg is going to go over the other. I'm going to put my arm past that leg, turning around to look behind me. It's probably just better if you just follow along and just watch what I'm doing than me actually trying to explain it, because if I were to give out all the anatomical positions, it gets kind of complicated. So just do like I'm doing here, basically, if you wanted to join in. Again, this is an aggressive type of stretch. It's not good for everybody. But again, I'm assuming that you've watched some more of my videos already, and you understand the idea of not going and pushing yourself past the point of pain. All right, I'm doing a unilateral seated hamstring stretch here. Again, this is something that, why is he doing this when it's the back that's the issue? Well, hamstrings, I have fairly tight hamstrings, and having tight hamstrings puts the pelvis in a rather disadvantageous position, biomechanically speaking. So I did want to stretch these out. I should be stretching my hamstrings on a more regular basis anyways. I find that this is true of most people in Western civilization, with all the sitting that we do, sitting in cars, sitting at computers, sitting during any type of commuting on trains and such. It is a lot of flexion of the knees and flexion of the hips, so the hamstrings don't nearly get put into a position where they're in a stretch position anyways. So again, just deep breathing, going further into the stretch, relaxing into it. You don't have to put your forehead to your knee, certainly. You don't need that to get a good hamstring stretch. Next, I'm doing a butterfly stretch. Again, this is what I just felt like I needed to do. It stretches the groin, stretches the hips. It does provide a little bit of a stretch to the low back as well by bending forward into it. Again, you can't just work on one body part. All parts of the body are connected, so you do have to kind of work on a lot. Next, transitioning into quadruped for the cat and camel exercise. I believe it has some other names. I've always learned it as cat and camel. Basically, it's quadruped position with pelvic tilting and spinal motion, as you see here. And again, slow and controlled. This is typically an exercise used for spinal stabilization and core strengthening. But again, I'm doing this for what feels good to me at the time, so that's why I'm doing it. Next, standing extensions. This is also a staple in the McKinsey method for treatment of disc pathologies, bulging discs, not herniated discs. There is a difference. Bulging disc is something that can be corrected with exercise. Herniation disc is something that you need to go see a surgeon for. So again, can't emphasize enough, you need to have a doctor's clearance before doing any exercise program, because you can actually hurt yourself quite a bit if you are not following doctor's orders. Okay, next I'm going to break out my massage therapy capsule. This particular product is by Skilz, S-K-I-L-Z. This is basically the shape of a peanut. I'm going to be putting it basically to massage my spinal muscles on either side of my spinous processes. This can be done laying down on top of it, but I'm instead choosing to go up against the wall because for me, there's less pressure and it's easier to do. It's less intense. Now, to be sure, this product is fairly firm, as you saw when I was squishing it. So it's about the kind of the firmness of EVA foam mats, kind of like the foam mats that I have laying down on the ground. It's kind of that level of thickness. There are people that will take 2 tennis balls and put them into a sock, for example, and try to do this. That's almost not the greatest thing in the world. It is kind of good if you can buy a product like this to buy it. I feel that it's worth it. It is somewhat tricky to make sure that it stays in place. The space in between, like the middle of the peanut, it allows for there not to be any pressure, or at least a very minimal amount of pressure to the spinous processes of the spine. But it does tend to get out of place, as you see that I have to take my time and make the adjustments here. Also, this is not the easiest position necessarily for everybody to get into, because basically you have to be able to be doing these little wall squats, and not everybody can do those. So laying on top of it, although intense, might be easier for some people. Next, I'm going to be using a lacrosse ball. Yes, a lacrosse ball. These things are really firm, like really firm. They have a certain texture to them that that lends to being able to do some myofascial techniques, and that's why I really bought this. I never really played lacrosse or do any lacrosse. I just wanted this particular product because I know exactly how firm it is and how well it works. So basically, I'm now massaging my back even to a greater extent than the peanut that I was using earlier. And I go on either side, again, not putting it directly over my spinous processes, that's too much, just into the muscle bellies on either side, and trying to create some relief. It can be not the most pleasant thing in the world. There's a thing between good pain and bad pain. So when doing any type of massage type techniques, there is good pain in which you are actually doing benefit and you're actually feeling some relief while doing it, while bad pain is just extraordinary and excruciating, and all you're doing is just damaging tissue. So this lacrosse ball, because it is so firm, it does kind of produce a and here I am demonstrating, do not go over the spinous process, go to the lateral to that. You don't want to be in the bad type of pain. You want that good pain where you know that you're feeling a release. And again, I'm having to help guide the location of this. And I now have my PVC pipe for some spinal rotations here. And I'll also be doing some side bending as well. You could just as easily use a broomstick or a dowel as well for this. I just happen to have the PVC pipe available readily, so I used it. And I was quite successful with this routine that I went through. I was at 0 out of 10 pain, and it did allow me to do my run immediately afterwards. It was a 30-minute run, so I know it seems a little strange to do 30 minutes of all these stretches and back exercises just to get a 30-minute run in, but it did help me to not have to use any ibuprofen or Tylenol or anything like that. So I was quite happy about that. Be sure to check back to this channel, like and subscribe, and we'll be posting up more videos. Bye-bye.